and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing another reading wrap-up video. I know you guys really enjoy these and I haven't done one in a while, so I have a lot of books to share with you guys, and I knew if I put it off any longer I would have to like leave some books out. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. But I'm really excited to announce that I'm going to be incorporating reading into my channel on Reading Wednesday. And this was a decision I made after I was kind of thinking about starting a book channel. I knew I didn't really want to, start from scratch and like create a whole new channel. And I decided that I wanted to kind of go the Mommy Monday route, and I feel like when I incorporated Mommy Monday onto my channel, mom content did become more of a staple to my channel, and I talk about it more often, and it's just a bigger part of my channel now. So I was hoping that incorporating Reading Wednesday to my channel, it will help reading become more of a staple to this channel, as well as like mommy stuff and cooking stuff and decorating and makeup and all that other stuff. But it'll help me kind of be able to focus on one day of the week. Now it's not going to be every Wednesday, but I'm going to try to do it often. So if you guys are excited about this, then thumbs up this video or comment down below or something and let me know. Let's go ahead and jump right in, because this video is probably going to be a little bit long like all my other wrap-ups. My wrap-ups are always really long, but you guys seem to not mind. So the first book that I really want to talk about is Sold by Patricia McCormick. And I read this book actually fairly recently, and this book was on my TBR for a long time, and I wasn't really sure like when I would get to this book, but I actually found this at a used bookstore for super cheap, and I was like looking at it and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a really short book. I was surprised. So I went ahead and I picked it up, and this is a National Book Award finalist, and it definitely deserves it. I gave this book 5 stars. This book is so difficult to read. I think it reminds me a lot of Night by Elie Wiesel, which I talked about in a few videos back. It's a really good book to read, but a very difficult book to read because it's really hard subject matter to like work through, but it's so good, I think, to help broaden your view of the world. And sometimes I think that even if a book is hard to read, it's important to read, and this is one of them. So this book is about a girl named Lakshmi, and she's a 13-year-old girl who basically lives up in the mountains of Nepal, and she just kind of lives the life, like it's a very simple life. She's poor, but she finds, happiness in the little things, basically, until one day her little hut gets destroyed by a monsoon. And so she decides that she wants to go help her family make money, and she wants to go be a maid in the big city. So her really crappy, horrible stepfather decides, yeah, sure, I'll send you off to the city to make some money for our family. And it turns out he sells her to basically sex trafficking, and she ends up in a brothel. And she's only 13 years old. And the thing about this book is this is like real, guys. And like it's one of those things like it's real. We all are aware of sex trafficking, but it's until you read a book like this where you're like, holy shit. And remember how I was saying I don't cry in books often? Oh, I cried in this one, guys. So something I really want to talk about with this book, and something that I think is a really good thing to note, is each year nearly 12,000 Nepali girls are sold by their families, intentionally or unwittingly, to a life of sexual slavery in the brothels of India. 12,000 young girls a year. That's insane. And when I read that, I remember being like, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to help these girls? Like, you feel so just helpless. It's worth a read, in my opinion, but if you don't feel like you can handle it, I totally understand. Okay, so the next books I want to talk about is actually a series that I read at the end of last year, and it is the Shatter Me series, and this is by Tahereh Mafi. So this is the first book. This is Shatter Me. Unravel Me is number 2. Ignite Me is book 3, and this one has the best cover in my opinion. And book 4 is Restore Me, and they're actually coming out, I think, with 2 more books. I think maybe it's 2 or 1, but one of them is coming out this year. I'm really excited. I can't remember what it's called though, to be honest with you, because it's actually novellas as well. They're only like 60-page novellas, but they're all like Restore Me, Define Me, Shatter Me, like they're all something me, and so I can never keep them straight, like which ones are which. This is one of those like really easy read series. It's like your typical YA type of series, you know what I mean? So it's not like something that's super intimidating, and these books you fly through. So if you want like a fast series to read that's not overly intimidating, this is one that I highly recommend because it is so fast. So if you don't know what this series is about, it's basically about It's kind of like an X-Men retelling. They're just like X-Men type characters, and the main girl is named Juliet, and she's actually prisoned in like an insane asylum because she has really strong powers. Basically, it's a dystopian world, and there's this big government type of group called the Reestablishment who's basically trying to take over the world and make it a better place again. So when she gets out of this insane asylum, she meets this group of people who are all mutants, and they're basically trying to overturn the Reestablishment, and she's trying to basically save the world. And there's a really good like love romance in these books, if you guys like romance, and it's very like love or hate to love. So if you like hate to love, kind of like that slow burn type of feel to your romances, then you'll really like this series. But the thing that I really liked about these books is they can feel adult if you want them to feel adult. Like, I was able to picture these characters as like 30-year-olds versus like 18-year-olds, which they're supposed to be 18, and I don't really like picturing my characters as 18 because I just can't relate, you know what I mean? Like, I can't relate to love interests that are 18 years old. Like, my love interests have to be like 35. So the nice things about these books is like I was really able to picture the characters older than they actually are, and it still worked with the story, if that makes sense. So I really like that about it. The thing I really like about Tahereh Mafi's writing is her character development. I love how she develops her characters. That is definitely her strong suit. She is so good at it. There's a character in this series named Kenji. He's literally one of my favorite characters that has ever been written because he is so well done. His like dialogue is so specific to Kenji. He is the sweetest, most charming, cutest, loyalist friend ever, and I'm obsessed with his character. And I feel like a lot of the characters in these books are just so well done and fleshed out, and I just feel like it's an entertaining series. If you really want something that's quick, easy, and entertaining, then I highly recommend these. And it's definitely kind of in the sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy category, but I really liked them, and they were very entertaining. So the next book I want to talk about is this one. This is The Girls at 17 Swan Street by Yara Zgheib, and this is actually an ARC. I got this at my local bookstore. They do this really fun thing where they give their ARCs away because you're not allowed to sell ARCs. So they wrap them up in like brown paper, and they write a very like 2-sentence synopsis on the front, and then you're able to just go in there and take a book off the shelf for free with knowing like hardly anything about it, and then you can just like donate money into like the donate bin for something, for like a charity. And this is the one that I picked out, and this was really good. So this book is actually about a girl. She's about mid-20s, she's married, and she develops an eating disorder, basically severe anorexia. She's a ballet dancer. So they move to America, and her husband makes her go into a treatment facility, and it's basically her recovery story in a treatment facility. And this book was so well done. So this is not a memoir or a biography or anything like that. This is a fiction story, but it is an own voices story, I'm pretty sure. I think Yara Zgheib had experienced a treatment facility, so she knows kind of what goes on in them, and she also knows what goes on in the mind of an anorexic person. So it's very realistic, and I can account to that because I've been in this type of situation, and it is spot on. She does such a good job at describing what treatment is like and how everything is like laid out, how they treat food, and how, you know, the patient's minds work, how the relationships between the characters work. It's just very realistic, which I really liked. The other thing I liked about this book is the fact that she's in her 20s. I feel like a lot of eating disorder related books are YA, which makes sense, but it's really rare to see, you know, eating disorder related books with people that are married or in their adult years. And so I really like that about this book because I think that it's different and it's for a more adult audience that might be struggling, because there are people that are older than, you know, teenagers that are struggling. But as you can see, I have a bunch of purple tabs. The purple tabs are things that were just spot on. And then the blue tabs were things that I didn't really like relate to that much. But if you look at all the purple tabs, there's so many good quotes in here where I was like, I definitely said that. I definitely thought that. I definitely experienced that. So this is just a really good book. Yes, it can be incredibly triggering. If you're somebody that's trying to recover, or you have thought about recovery, or you are just not in a very good state, I don't recommend this because this could 100% be triggering for you. I personally never found stuff like this triggering. I read a lot of recovery books when I was in treatment because we didn't have like the internet. So I read like Wasted by Maria Hornbacher, which is one of the most famous recovery novels, kind of like memoirs out there. And I didn't personally find it triggering. I kind of felt like it gave me this sense of like I wasn't alone in recovery. I felt like somebody else had gone through it and knew what I was going through. So I personally don't find these overly triggering. If anything, I find them like inspirational, but to each their own. So be careful with these books if you are in recovery or you want to recover. So the next book I want to talk about is one that it was the last book I read since creating this video, and this is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. So if you haven't heard about this book, then you've probably been living under a rock. So this book is a very, very popular YA book. I think it came out in like 2014. It's an old one, but it's been sitting on my shelf for a while. And so finally I got this urge to pick it up. I don't know what made me pick it up finally. And everyone was like, oh, it's so good. Like, you're gonna love it. And I loved this book. I feel like this is one of those books where you either love it or you don't. But I think that this book is very well constructed, and I want to give props to this book. Like, even though you may not like it for whatever reason, she constructed this book like flawlessly. There's so many fun little Easter eggs that you can like go back and look for when you're done reading this book. Like, this is going to be the funnest book to reread. Like, once you know how everything wraps up, like, you just want to go back and like reread the entire thing again, because it just makes you think about a lot of stuff. I loved it. I loved the setting. I loved the characters. I just loved the kind of message that it was putting across. It was just really a good book. So basically what this book is about, how do I say this without like giving it away? It's basically about this really rich family who is basically incredibly wealthy. They're called the Sinclairs, and their grandfather is basically loaded with money, and they have an island. They have like 4 or 5 houses on this island, and their family goes there every year for the summer, and they spend all summer at this island. And there is 4 cousins that are all the same age, and they hang out together every summer. The main character, Cadence, loses her memory. There's an accident on the island during summer of their 15th year, and she cannot remember anything from that summer. And so she comes back a couple summers later, and she's trying to piece everything together. Like, why can't I remember anything? Why isn't anybody telling me what happened? Like, I'm really trying to understand like why I can't remember what my accident was, but nobody will talk about it with her, and she doesn't understand why. And this story is basically her trying to piece everything together, and then the ending is just so good. It's just such an interesting book. I'm not kidding when I said I almost read this in a day, because it was that entertaining. It was just entertaining. Like, I didn't want to put it down. When I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about reading it. So every time I would like put it down, I would just like go back to reading it again, because I was just so entertained by this book. So I highly recommend this. I think it's so good. I'm surprised they haven't made a movie about this book, because I think it would make a really cool movie, but it would make a really good like vacation read, or like, you know, a poolside read or something like that. I think this would be a really good one. So the next 2 books I read is part of a duology, and it is these ones here. I love these covers so much. I think these covers are beautiful. So this is The Wrath and the Dawn, and this is The Rose and the Dagger, and they're by Marie Ahdieh. So this is actually based on the Arabian story 1001 Nights. And if you haven't heard of that story, you could probably look it up, but that's what they're based off of. So basically it's about this evil king who marries new wives and kills them every morning. And so the main character, Shahrazad, her cousin gets killed by the king. He marries her and then kills her the next morning. So Shahrazad wants to go into the kingdom, she wants to marry the king, and she wants to kill the king before he can kill any more women. And so she goes in there, and then the king is not who she expects him to be. And that's kind of where the story goes from there. I'm not going to give anything else away, but that's kind of how the story works. And these were really, really good. I gave this 5 stars at first. I actually lowered it down to 4 stars, and I actually gave this one 4 stars as well. But that does not mean that these books are bad. 4 stars still means really, really good. I really enjoyed these. I thought they were so fun. The romance is super good, and they're just very entertaining books. The one thing and the one complaint I had is there's a lot of words that I don't know. She speaks a lot in Arabic terms, like outfits and clothes and swords and like certain things. She uses like the Arabic word versus the American word, so a lot of times I didn't know what she was talking about. And there is a glossary in here actually, and I was looking for the glossary the entire time I was reading this book. I was like, where the frick is the glossary? There has to be one in here. And finally I was like, whatever, there must not be one in here, and I just have to like guess at what these things are. But finally when I was done reading it, I ended up finding the glossary. So there is a glossary in here if you have trouble reading some of the terms, but I couldn't find it when I was reading it, and so it made the reading experience kind of difficult for me at times, but it's still readable. Like, it's not gonna make it unfun to read, if that makes sense. Actually, the king in this book, what's his name? Khalid. So I had some issues actually at first with Khalid because the author didn't really do his character justice at the beginning. Like, I felt really disconnected from the king, and I felt like he was a key part to the book. Like, I felt like she kept telling us he was a horrible person and telling us he was just like this bad human being, but she never showed us that he was a bad human being. So the entire time I'm like, I don't feel like I hate him enough. Like, I feel like you need to show me that he is a bad person for me to hate him. You know what I mean? So I feel like she kind of failed there, but throughout the entire story, I actually grew an incredible love for Khalid for a specific reason, and it's his personality. He is, and this is so rare to find, I feel like, in any fantasy novel, he is a quiet but strong leader, and he's a quiet king, and he's kind of like on the shy side. He's a man of few words, and a lot of people judge him for that at the beginning, but I really liked that he was a quiet, kind of shy king, because I never see that. And I feel like it's just great representation for us introverted, shy people. And I think it was such a good and unique direction to take his character, because you just don't see that, I feel like, in royalty. And because usually I feel like royalty is very snarky and very witty and very like bold, and that's usually how you see royal characters or like main protagonists. They always have that snarky side, but you don't see that shyness in characters very often, especially powerful characters. So I really liked that. So the next book that I picked up was Gemini, and you guys know that this was in my top 10 books I want to read this year video, and I did pick this one up first out of all of those books, and I'm so glad I did because it was amazing, just like I knew it would be. I gave Illuminae 5 stars. I gave this one 4 stars, and it's not, like I said, that is bad. 4 stars still means I really enjoyed the book, but there's just something about Illuminae that I liked better, and I think it was the relationship between the artificial intelligence and the main character. But this is basically just following a new group of characters, and it's a continuation on from the first book, but then in the third book, the two characters in both books come together and they're kind of in a team. So at first I was kind of like, do I really want to follow new characters? Like, I kind of want to go back and follow the old characters, you know what I mean? But it actually worked in this a lot, and I really liked it. I felt like this was really entertaining. There was certain parts in this book I felt like got a little bit redundant. There was a lot of chasing and running and chasing and running and chasing and running and chasing and running, and I felt like it kept going on like that forever. And don't get me wrong, I don't mind a little bit of chasing and like running, but sometimes it can just get a little bit prolonged and you're like, okay, I get it. They're like running away from each other. So I kind of felt like I felt that way just a little bit at parts of this, but other than that, so good. These books are so entertaining. I can't stress it enough. They're just entertaining books. And they're so unique in the way that they're written. Like, main character was an artist, and so she had a lot of artwork that she had drawn, like in her journal. So there's a lot of pages of her art, and I thought that that was really interesting as well. So she does like cartoons and almost like little comics in her artwork, and so you get to see all that kind of stuff, and it was just a good book. The only thing I really want to warn you about though, because I felt like this with Illuminae and I felt like this with this book as well, these books are really confusing at first, and you're going to feel confused at first, but the stories really flush out as you go and they become much easier to read and understand. But at first you're gonna be like, what is going on? And trust me, like, you're not gonna be the only one that feels that way, because you kind of feel like you missed something or you're not understanding something really simple. But I think the authors do that kind of on purpose, and you are going to feel slightly confused at first, but it will completely like flesh itself out and you won't feel that way through the entire book. So just know that going in, because I don't want you to like DNF it because you're like, I have no freaking clue what's going on. So next up is a thriller that I decided to read, and this is called The Breakdown by B.A. Paris. And this book was exactly what I needed when I read it. So I had been reading a lot of fantasies and a lot of very like flowery writing, you know, like very descriptive, very beautiful language, which tends to be like fantasy type of books. And I really wanted something that was super simple. Like basically somebody just telling you a story. They're not trying to fluff up their writing or like make their writing overly descriptive. They're just literally like telling you a story, and it's super, super easy to read. That is exactly what I wanted, and that is exactly what I got with this book. This is another book that I would highly recommend for like a poolside read or like a vacation read. So this book is basically about a girl who is married to this guy, and they're kind of just living their life in, I think, Britain or something like that. I know that they're like British, I think. One day the girl is driving through the forest on the way home, and it's really rainy and it's dark, and she sees somebody on the side of the road stopped, and she's like, should I stop for this girl? Should I go help her? I don't know. So she pulls over, and she's kind of hoping maybe the car flashes her, like I need some help or something like that. But she never flashes her, so she's like, okay, she must be fine. So finally she gets home, and the next morning her husband is like, did you hear that somebody got murdered? And it ends up being the person that was in the car that she saw on the side of the road. And she goes through this horrible feeling of just feeling like guilty that she didn't stop and help this person. But then the weird thing is her memory starts to go, and she can't remember anything to save her life. Like, she buys things without remembering, she does things without remembering, and I have to tell you guys, like, one of my favorite tropes in books is memory loss. I just love memory loss in books. It's always so interesting to me to understand why they lost their memory. I just always find it very entertaining, so this was right up my alley. But I can say that I did predict this book, but I didn't really necessarily make this book horrible, because there was definitely aspects to this book that you really can't figure out until the end, and so it still makes it really fun to read. But I did have a pretty accurate prediction with this book. I think I gave it 3 stars. Not that 3 stars is bad. My 3-star rating is like right in the middle. It's not like great, but it's not bad either. Like, I'm glad I read it, but it's not like the best book I've ever read of all time, if that makes sense. But it was still interesting. It was still good. So I really recommend this. I really liked it, and I'm glad I read it. So the next 2 books I'm going to share with you are books that I was a little bit disappointed in, and I'm not disappointed in books very often. I just, generally speaking, enjoy reading, so I don't hate books that often. But there are times where I'm reading a book and I'm just like, holy crap, this is so boring, or it just is a little bit of a disappointment. It's not what I was hoping it would be. So these 2 books are kind of like that for me. So the first book is Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry, and I was so excited to read this. Like, I heard it was so funny. I heard it was just a really, really good YA from a lot of people, and so I was really excited to go into this book. But I was actually kind of disappointed in it. It wasn't really what I was like hoping for. It wasn't horrible. I think I gave this book 3 stars, but it was like a lower 3, you know. So this book is about a guy who is an atheist, and he ends up getting transferred to a Catholic school. So he's going to this Catholic school, and he obviously doesn't believe anything that they're telling him, and he feels just like an outsider. But then he finds a group of people called Heretics Anonymous, and it's a group full of people that just have completely different beliefs than the school itself. So there's like a gay Jewish person, there is a Wiccan girl, and then there's a Catholic girl who is just very liberal when it comes to her views. It's like she challenges the Catholic ideas a lot, so she's in that group, and so he joins this group, and it's basically them like making a statement, I guess, like trying to make a statement through this entire book, and it ends up like going awry, and I just didn't really like it that much. I didn't like the love between 2 of the characters. I thought it was just very odd. It just didn't work for me. There was like no chemistry there. I was like, this relationship would never work in real life. I felt like the main character was just really annoying. He was very impulsive, and he just kind of got on my nerves a little bit. He'd be somebody I wouldn't really like that much in real life. Just very impulsive nature, which made things go wrong, and that's pretty much all I can say about it. I didn't find it that funny. I heard that this was hilarious. It says a divine comedy on the top. I didn't really find it that funny. Maybe it's just not my sense of humor. I don't know, because I know some people thought it was hilarious, but I didn't really. But yeah, I just wasn't as excited about this book as I was hoping. I'm not saying it was like so bad. Like, I've read books that I really just don't like I'm bored. I wasn't necessarily bored while I was reading this book. It just didn't connect with me. The next book is a book that I really didn't like. This was probably one of my least favorite books of last year. And I was really excited to read this actually because I thought it was going to be really good. But it is called Strange Grace by Tessa Gratton. Yeah, I just wasn't a fan. But the thing that I did kind of find interesting about this book was there was a really, really unique polyamorous relationship. And this is not something that I would have assumed that I would have found endearing, but there was something about this like polyamory that the author like vaguely and very subtly portrayed that was really well done. And she didn't touch on it very heavily though, and I was kind of disappointed because I think that if she would have focused a little bit more on this relationship, it would have been a really interesting story because I think she developed it really, really well. She just didn't go anywhere with it. And I was like, dang it. Like, I would have really liked this book if you would have focused more on that like polyamorous relationship. It was really interesting. But she didn't really go there. And I also felt like there was this one character that was either transgendered, gender fluid, or a transgender person that hadn't transitioned. Like, I couldn't figure out like this character. Like, she didn't really like, she was hinting at it, but she never really explained it. And I guess she doesn't really have to explain it, but it would have been a really good thing, I feel like, for the representation. But I feel like I had no idea, like, she never really comes out to say it. And I was kind of disappointed with that too. Like, I felt like she had a lot of really great things to touch on and to grow and to expand on, but she didn't. And this book is really long, so you would think, well, it's not really long. It's really not that long, but you would think that there would be enough pages to kind of elaborate on some of this stuff. I just felt like it was extremely flowery writing and a lot of space was wasted with like poetic, pretty writing when we could have done a lot more with the actual storytelling. So I just wasn't a fan of this. I gave it 2 stars. Yeah, that was probably my least favorite book from this whole wrap up. So anyways, guys, this video is incredibly long. I apologize. I'm gonna try to edit this down a little bit, but that is it for this video and all the books that I read throughout this last cycle. I don't know, when was the last time I posted a reading wrap up, like October or something? So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you're excited for Reading Wednesday, and also comment down below if you have read any of these books and which ones you liked and which ones you didn't like. I would be genuinely curious. I'm also curious what you are reading right now and if you have any recommendations for me or for my subscribers or anything like that. So let's just talk about books down below. And I think that's it, guys. So I'll talk to you guys later. Don't forget to subscribe and press the bell notifications. And I think that's it. So I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.